Graves as a decorated Boston police officer, a man of honor, duty, and sacrifice. But to Elena Graves, he was simply Dad, a man who loved grilling steaks, beat her in chess, and could read people like maps. He died 10 years ago of a heart attack, mourned by city leaders, colleagues, and newspapers alike. Elena followed in his footsteps, not in uniform but in court, defending those the system forgot. At 36, she was known for her brutal honesty and unmatched record as a defense attorney. She had no time for distractions, no desire for family, and no tolerance for personal emotion in her work. Until her mother's death changed everything. Elena hadn't seen her mother in nearly 4 years. Their relationship had eroded into bitter silence after a final, unresolved argument about the past, about Sarah. At the reading of the will, there was nothing sentimental. A few modest financial assets and, oddly, a sealed wooden box, labeled in her mother's delicate handwriting. For Elena. Open alone. Inside the box, a dusty case file marked Sarah Rivers, 1996. Closed. A silver necklace with a broken clasp, Sarah's favorite, long presumed lost. A small envelope containing a handwritten note. You were just a child. You didn't need to know then. But now you do. The man who died didn't kill Sarah. The real killer was closer than you ever imagined. The truth is in your blood. Elena's stomach turned. Sarah had been her mother's younger sister. She remembered the night she died. A blur of sirens, cold floors, and whispers behind hands. The killer, James Connolly, was arrested days later. Elena remembered his eyes on the courtroom TV. Hollow, defeated. He was executed in 1998. Elena didn't want to go back. But the message gnawed at her like a toothache. She pulled the files, visited old archives, scoured the court records. Everything about the case was neat, too neat. Connolly had confessed, but it had been under intense pressure. No lawyer, no video, just a signed statement. There was DNA evidence, skin cells under Sarah's fingernails. The original investigators dismissed the mismatch as contamination. But Elena, with a decade of experience in wrongful conviction defense, knew better. She sent the DNA for modern reanalysis, using her own DNA sample to rule out family contamination. She expected nothing. Instead, the lab called her 3 days later. The technician's voice was tight. We have a 47.3% match between the sample from Sarah and your DNA, Ms. Graves. That kind of overlap typically indicates a close familial relationship. Half-sibling, parent, or child. The breath caught in her throat. It wasn't contamination. The killer was someone in her family. Elena returned to her childhood home, a place she'd avoided since her father's death. Inside his study, everything was preserved. His medals, his police commendations, his old notebooks. She opened every drawer, every cabinet. In the back of a locked desk, she found a sealed envelope labeled, "Asterisk for my daughter. Few ever learn the truth." Inside was a confession, dated weeks before his death. "I didn't plan to kill Sarah. It happened after she said she'd tell your mother about us. I lost control. I didn't mean to. But I did. Jimmy panicked. I promised him protection. He took the fall. I paid for his sister's home. Covered it up. I was scared. I'm sorry, Elena. I never wanted this to become your burden." Attached to the confession was a photograph. Her father and James Connolly. Teenagers laughing, arms around each other. Best friends. Her father had framed an innocent man. And the system helped him do it. Elena sat in her father's study for hours, paralyzed by the weight of it all. If she went public, it would destroy her father's legacy, and her own name. But if she stayed silent, James Connolly's name would remain stained. His family would never see justice. She tracked down Grace Connolly, James's only sister, now 63, retired, and living in a government-subsidized apartment in Dorchester. Grace opened the door slowly, eyes narrowing until Elena explained who she was. She listened in silence as Elena laid the confession on the table. Grace stared at it for a long time, her lips trembling. He told me once. He didn't do it. But he said if I ever wanted a house, I had to shut my mouth. I didn't understand then. But now I do. My brother died so your daddy could live with himself. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I don't want revenge, she said. I want the truth written down. I want people to know. Elena filed for posthumous exoneration on behalf of James Connolly. The case shook the city. The public was stunned. Newspapers that once glorified Captain Thomas Graves now ran damning headlines. Decorated officer framed innocent man for murder of sister-in-law. DNA evidence reverses 1998 execution. Too late for justice. The state held a formal inquiry. Connolly was exonerated. His family received a modest settlement from the state, though no dollar amount could undo a wrongful death. Elena faced a disciplinary review by the Bar Association, but her role in uncovering the truth saved her career. When asked if she regretted exposing her father, she said, "Justice doesn't end at the grave. It begins where silence used to be." 6 months later, Elena stood in front of 2 new headstones. One read, James Connolly 1952 to 1998 finally proven innocent. The other, Thomas Graves 1948 to 2010 a hero, and a man who erred. She left Sarah's necklace between them. Elena gave up private criminal defense and joined the Innocence Project. She now used her skills to free the wrongly convicted, those buried by flawed systems and lies. One afternoon she received a new case file. A 1993 murder. Confession with no legal counsel. An untested blood sample. She stared at it, her fingers tracing the grain of the paper, and whispered, "Let's see what your blood has to say." And with that she began again.